Don't believe the hype. That's number one of the 5 miraculous things that you can do to get yourself married. Coming up on episode 4 of Solving Jewish Singleness with a Therapist That Gets It, Liz Wallenstein. Okay, so in episode 3, I shared my story of what I call my miraculous marriage. And now in the next 5 brief episodes, I'm going to give you the 5 things that I and others I know of have done to create for ourselves a miraculous marriage. So number 1 is do not give in to the illusion. Okay, because the illusion is everywhere in dating. And I call it the illusion because it's what looks like rationally, what makes sense and what will make you successful, what will get you married. But in reality, not so much, especially when your goal is to make a miraculous marriage. So what am I talking about? Looks, weight, money, charm, being smooth, whatever you want to call it. So these things get a lot of emphasis in dating. And the truth is, there's a reason for that. It does help you a lot in dating. Okay. Whether you like it or not, the reality is that people who, do well in those areas, they do well in dating. They get asked out more often. They may have more dates. They get more attention. That's true. And people see that. And so they think, okay, that person has, a leg up from me, or that even if I'm pretty, I have to be even prettier, or whatever money I have is not enough. I got to focus on having as much money as I can, or I got to learn how to be smooth and win people over. Now, I'm not saying that there's no value in this whatsoever. There is value. I do think that, it's the responsibility of a person to look as good as they can, not overdo it, that's what most of your, time and attention goes into, but to look as good as you can, try to become more socially savvy if you think that would help you, that you should care about what your plan is to, or what your part is in providing for a family, if that's the goal. There is value to these things, but there's definitely an overemphasis on this. That's what's going to get you favored. That's what's going to get you ahead. To the point where I see people over-investing in these areas, and we have limited time and resources. When you think about what to invest in to get you married, again, some attention to those areas, but definitely not as much as people make it out to be. Because that might do well in dating, but dating is different than marriage. So you could have a million dates, but that doesn't make you any closer to marriage. You could have one date in a year and you'd be very close to marriage. So be careful about what you emphasize, what you invest in. I think that you'll get much further in investing in yourself, in your character, and in the person that you are, in expanding yourself. If you're focusing on the long-term results, if you're focusing on finding that person who's going to be like, I want to marry you, that's going to get you further. I always think about be the person that you want to marry. Who's your ideal person? Well, better make sure you're that person yourself. So that's illusion number 1, trap number 1 that you don't want to fall into. The next one is the illusion that becoming more secular increases your chances. Again, this makes sense, that people would think that, the more religious you are, the smaller your pool. So a religious person might feel like, well, I have to relax some of my religious standards because there's too many people who hold that against me. Or a religious person might feel like I have to be open to non-religious people and date them and be open to becoming less religious myself because, my pool is too small if I only focus on the religious. Or it could be, I need to go into the religion, that our religion is way too small. Our numbers are very small. If I want to find somebody, I have to go out. Now, especially when I create a miraculous marriage, that's the opposite. You don't find somebody great. You don't build yourself a great future by compromising yourself, by compromising what you value, by taking away from your integrity in that way. If anything, showing your commitment accrues merit. It gets favor on your side to find somebody. But not only that, I can tell you, I work with a big variety of people. I work with a lot of religious people, not religious people, and even non-Jewish people. And I can tell you that the secular dating world is definitely not doing any better than the religious world is. And in my opinion, there's even more risk the less religious you go, because if you're dating in a world where the values and the standards are kind of arbitrary, it kind of adjusts according to cultural norms and really society norms instead of like religious standards, then things are not in a very good place right now. That what people value and favor are not the things that lead to marriage, and definitely lead to a long-lasting quality marriage. So even though it feels hard to confine yourself to the small group to create a miraculous marriage, you got to do that. I can tell you for myself, I couldn't imagine how I would even just meet anybody new. I felt like I knew everybody there was to know in my circle. Well, guess what? I married somebody who was living across the country, who had recently just moved to New York. And that's the way it worked for me. I didn't have to date outside. I was able to find inside because, when you stick with that commitment, you see doors open. You see that anything is possible. So, and also, in the kind of secular dating world, they're already at the point where they're creating lifestyles around, well, if it's too hard to find somebody, then just stop finding somebody. Have kids on your own, or you don't have to get married. And if that's a person's choice, that's fine, but it doesn't have to be that. And if that's not your number one, again, don't think about odds. That's really what not getting into the illusion is about. You don't go by odds. You don't go by necessarily what makes sense. You go by being your best self and sticking with your values, and you just see the doors open up. It is possible. The next thing is that the more exposure you have, the better your chances, right? I mean, again, odds make sense. The more apps and websites and events and more people you say yes to, I personally am not somebody who believes in the philosophy, what does it hurt to go out with another person, do this events, whatever. I believe that it can hurt. I believe that burnout is a significant factor why it's so hard to find people these days. I believe that if you give too many people a chance, you do too many things, you end up feeling really bad about yourself. That decreases your chances, doesn't increase them. So if you ask me, it's not about more exposure, it's about the right exposure. So think about your options and think about, what do you think is the thing you could put your best foot forward? What do you think is the best fit for you? Where are you most comfortable? Where, what showcases you the best or whatever, and kind of stick with that. And if you're curious about something you never tried, then by all means, go and try it. But then evaluate afterwards. Is that a good choice for me? Is that not? But definitely don't believe that the more you're seen, the better. Because what also happens is you can get overexposed. And what that means is that people don't make the effort to get to know you, or they feel like, oh, I already know you, just because they see you so much. And you can never take something to the next level with somebody like that, because you just assume from seeing them around so much that you know them. So it's always good to have some novelty and not be too overexposed. And then the next illusion that I would say, kind of similar to the last one, is that the amount of dates you have equals your chances. So I know people, I'll give an example soon, didn't go on a date for 2 years and then met the one. I know people who go on crazy amounts of dates. They're no closer to finding that one. I think that as you get older, or the longer you've been dating, and especially if you're dating in kind of narrow circles, you should expect a drop off in the amount of dates. You should expect a drop off in the amount of new faces you meet and the quality of people that you meet, truthfully. But that shouldn't matter. Don't feel bad if you see somebody going on many more dates than you have. Don't feel bad if you don't have so many dates. It's not about that. So if those are the illusions, what is reality, capital R? What is the truth, capital T? That all it takes is one. And don't limit yourself by thinking about the odds. If you go by odds and logic, that is limiting. If you go by belief that all it takes is one, you can find success. Because the Jewish word that we use for this is hishtadlut. We have to put in reasonable effort. That's what God asks of us. That's what the expectation is. So what that means is, these days he's not doing open, blatant miracles like splitting the sea. Miracles he does all the time. Open, blatant, obvious ones, no. So he needs you to do something that could reasonably bring about your partner. But if you have trust that ultimately it's coming from him, then that could be enough. It might be that, he's trying to help you zone in on what's really going to help you in the long term by having you get to know yourself better, by having repeated experiences, or, steering you away from choosing things that aren't good for you and closer to things that are working for you by having a variety of experiences over years. But it's not about the odds. Don't invest too much in things that are superficial, because again, that'll get you more attention, right? That'll get you more attention, but that's not what gives you long-term success. That's not necessarily what lands the marriage and lands a quality marriage. I'll just give you a very short story because I feel like it illustrates these points very well. So I was working with somebody. She was attractive. She had a great personality. She, in a lot of ways, she seemed like a great catch, but it wasn't happening for her for many years. And what started to happen was, she was getting very emotional about it. She's an emotional person. And, she started getting a lot of fights with people, and she started to kind of get triggered by lots of different social environments. And it just was becoming obvious that it wasn't good for her to continue on this way. Like, she was becoming extremely depressed, extremely anxious. She definitely wasn't helping her cause by letting that continue. She was only losing herself and taking away from everything about her that was great. And she had decided, talking together, that was it. Like, she needed a break. She needed to just take herself out of all of this. And she went even more extreme with it than I had expected her to, but she really took herself completely out of the scene. And this is a modern Orthodox woman. She was living on the Upper West Side. But she stopped going to all the events and to the synagogues where people would congregate. And, she hadn't, I think it had been 2 years that she didn't have a date, but she also knew that if she had too much idle time, that also wouldn't be good for her. She would be preoccupied with her life and what was going on and what's going on with these other people. So what she did was she threw herself into chesed. So, acts of kindness, helping out people in need. And she signed up for several different chesed organizations. And she got very involved with families and individuals who needed help with a variety of things. Now, some people do it in hopes that they'll meet somebody that way, and I'm not knocking that, but that was not what she was doing. She really changed her life by becoming involved in other people's lives. And it was actually a very smart way of dealing with her issues. Was, if she's going to become preoccupied with something, let it be that good stuff and not her own stuff. And it's crazy how it happened, but 2 years of doing this, she just gets a message online out of nowhere from a guy she never knew well at all. I hadn't seen in many, many years, but their family used to go in the same Passover program together, and, used to go to the same hotel. And he said, I remember you years ago from that Passover program, and somebody had mentioned that, you're single, and, do you want to meet up sometime? Do you want to go out? And they went out, and, in her mid-40s, she gets married to a good guy, ended up having 2 kids together. And she has a very nice life, and she's very happy. And this is after she took herself out of everything, hadn't had a date or had much exposure to dates in 2 years. But what she did do was invest in being a better person, doing good. And then it literally just ended up in her lap out of nowhere like that. So that's just one story. There's others like them. It's very possible, but, do reasonable effort, because that's what God asks. But do not think that you are in control or that this is about the odds, and have trust and invest in yourself and think about the things that put your best foot forward. Good luck.
If you thought this recording was helpful, please share it on social media so that it gets to more people that it can help. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel and like this video. If you're interested in therapy sessions with me online, please contact me through my website or my email or social media. Feel free to send me questions and suggestions of what you'd like to hear me talk about through social media or my website, lizwallensteintherapy.com. Best of luck to you on your journey. I hope to hear good news soon.